This country's not going to be saved from the top because that's where all the rot is. It's too deep. It's going to be saved from the grassroots.
Good morning, folks. On this delightful July 29th, it's another TCR, another Crossroads program, and I'm joined by a panel of experts here. We will discuss social credit and some of the things that are going on that could be resolved by actually looking at the real world and start to implement real world conditions onto the financial system, which is, of course, social credit. Welcome, first of all, André Meloche from Canada. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
And John Paul Berg, also from Canada.
Always a pleasure, Neville.
Robert Klinck from Alberta. How are you, El? Good.
Now living in Quebec. Been in Quebec.
Oh, in Quebec now. Okay, very good. Originally from Alberta.
Yeah.
And my countryman Daniel Criddle over in Western Australia.
Hello, glad to be here.
Very good. So I had a bit of an issue last week, not being able to get on, and it gave me a bit of thought about some of the things we look at. We are conditioned in many, many ways to look for difficulties and look for the hardest possible solution. We don't often look at what's the most simple. So my issue, I ended up spending a couple of hours trying to go through software and stuff last week, and it turned out to be a plug in the wrong place, which you'd think I'd figure out pretty easy, but sometimes, like I say, you get a bit bamboozled. And I drew the parallel between that and the financial system. We so often rely on experts that are full of ideas, and they have all these theories, and they have algorithms, and they have, you name it, they can show you the equations on a big whiteboard and pretend that they know what they're talking about to solve a problem. I would suggest that 90% of the financial problems we face are very simple. And it's because the financial system has been built wrongly. And it serves a purpose. It serves the purpose of those wishing to control us and those wishing to implement the coming surveillance world and global government. Now, once upon a time, say that I would have been considered really out there with my tinfoil hat on. But I think we've come to a point now that there's an awful lot of society, people out there that are aware that something is not right. And they're beginning to see that all of the things that are being pushed are for the benefit of control over us. And at that point, we then need to ask, well, hey, what are we going to do about it? And as social creditors, we need to be out there talking about it and telling people about the real world and how it should actually work compared to what's actually going on. So the first thing I'd like to start out probably with is Donald Trump, because he's always a good source of information. So a source of a laugh, if you like to call it that way. I was just noting that in his first year in office, it's suggested that he's earned $2.2 billion. Now that's interesting. It's I just wonder how much his office is that. If he's so busy being the president, does he have time for extra trading somewhere else that he's doing this, or is it a consequence of his being in office? That leads us to insider trading and all that sort of possibility, which I'm not suggesting for a moment that's what he's done, but the other part of that is a press release. I'm trying to think. He was giving a press release to a particular group just recently, and he was talking about allowing his tweets to be monetized, as in instant access or early access, I think it was called, to his tweets. Now, if you have a large amount of trading ability, if you are a big trader on the market, milliseconds can make the difference between making money or not making money. And if he's selling his tweets extra early, I've got a question. Isn't that some form of insider trading for those who can take advantage of it, if you've got the money to pay for it? How does that really fit morally with a president's role? I personally think it's abhorrent. I don't like the idea at all. But then I don't like the stock market either. So for a comment on that, I think that and the other things that are going on in the same vein, Andre, would you like to start?
Neville, you're talking about insider trading, and I would refer to moral compass or moral rule. It's not new. This is not new. You remember Bernard Madoff 15 years ago, who died in jail, who robbed $50 billion at the time. What is funny is since 2000 until 2026, what we were considering as a crime has become normalized. I was referring to Jacinda Ardern about the new normal. It's everything that they do is normal, and might makes right. Michael Jones, who's an American writer, he always says that the truth is the opinion of the powerful. As long as they are in power, they can do whatever they want. And you're saying insider trading. Trump doesn't have to trade. You just have to post a tweet and he will influence the market. That's what I call performative language. What he's doing is saying something and it is reacting in real time. You can just watch the market and see how people are not rational anymore. I used to see and think that the financial market were rational actors. They knew what to do. They knew how to make profit, for example. But now it's a completely irrational market, and it is a symptom of a society that lacks morale. Trump is not the first one; he's not the only one, and there will be many of them after him. The problem is that he's the president of the United States, so every time he speaks, he has millions of people watching him, and he's influencing people. We can even call him an influencer. I think it was in 2016. During the presidential campaign, he was the person that was tweeting the most on Twitter, X today, but Twitter at the time. You say, how come he would be so sore on his thumb because he's tweeting so much? Of course, he's not tweeting. He must have an army of people who are commenting. But I think we are arriving at a point where there's no more morale. And John Paul was saying something backstage. He was saying how we will unite the left and the right. I have the feeling that they will unite on the barricades when the crisis will arrive. It's not what I expect, but I could say when the crisis is there, there's an opportunity. And the opportunity of a system that is collapsing is to present a solution that is rational, that appeals to people, and that would solve problems, and ordinary problems. You have practically 2.5 million people just in Canada who goes to food bank every month. If we think about 1929, 2029, the Great Depression, maybe the doctrine of Douglas will have its glorious moment, I hope.
Yeah, and you're pointing out something there that I think you touched on earlier, John, when you were talking about George Soros and his methods of dealing with or making money. So would you like to continue on, John?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, there's a reflexive aspect to it. Like they'll look at factors in certain markets, certain national markets, that will indicate there's a way to destabilize it. And then after that's fomented, they will go in and buy everything up at a bargain rate. I think he wrote about this. I believe he coined the term reflexive alchemy in regards to his tactics for making money in the market. But basically, it's creating conditions and then benefiting off them. So it's definitely irredeemable from a moral standpoint. But when you look at Trump, now we obviously can't insinuate or indicate that he is definitely insider trading, but he's definitely pretty lucky. And when you look at how many times he's declared this war won, I believe it's over 40 times. That's no exaggeration. 40 times he went on social media or in press conference and declared the war in Iran won. We decimated their military. The Strait of Hormuz is going to open and everything will be flowing as usual. And then there's some things moved around the market by various family members, and it turns out they make a lot of money. So it's like I said, they're either very lucky and the circumstances are advantaging them, or they're doing something that's reflexive in a similar way that Soros has done.
I like that, the reflexive alchemy. Yeah, it's like turn into lead and then buy it back as gold.
That's right.
Very good. Robert, would you like to make comment?
Well, I think Trump has been thinking this way for a long time. I remember, I think in his first term, seeing him in the Oval Office with a bunch of billionaires from Silicon Valley. And he was saying, so what did you think of the money you made this week? And, he's just appealing to this cupidity and this avariciousness. And that seems to be all he thinks is important in life. What a terrible example to be setting for people. What does he think about Gaza? He figures Gaza is great because it's turning into an investment opportunity. They can drive all the Gazans out of their homes and demolish the place, and then they'll turn it into a beautiful seaside resort. Well, this is almost impossible to believe that he can be so blatant about his corrupt aspirations. And, people wonder if he's a Christian. Well, Christians are supposed to love their fellow man, all of them. And that's not the way Trump thinks. Trump thinks there are winners and there are losers. And I'm going to be a big winner, and I'll bring along my buddies with me. They'll be winners. But all the losers are just losers. Forget about them. They have no significance. So we have an utterly disgraceful model of administration now. And there should be a reaction against it because where does it lead? It leads to a few very wealthy people manipulating the economy for their own advantage and everybody else sinking lower and lower on the economic scale without those people caring one bit about that. Don't think your government is concerned to uplift you or to encourage you or to make opportunities for you. They are an inside group, and they are protecting themselves, and they're developing systems that reinforce their power. This is what the banking system is. The banking system has been designed by bankers to provide advantage to bankers. And people think, oh, well, the money system, well, we just be involved in it, but it's designed to make you a loser. And more people are losers because they're not getting the advantages of all our technological progress as we should be. We should all be living much better lives, but we're not, because that advantage that is inherent in technological development is not being transferred to the population. There's a huge gap between our productive potential and our distributive ability. Our ability is there. It's just not developed because we have a corrupt financial system that reinforces monopoly rather than distributing benefits to an entire population. And unfortunately, I've come to the conclusion that the population has so lost the sense of gratitude for being on a wonderful earth with fantastic resources and inheriting technology that previous generations didn't have, although they probably lived better than many of us are doing now. But unless we have a sense of gratitude among the population, I don't see how this is very correctable. We've got to recognize the reality we're in, and the reality is that we are so rich that it's almost incomprehensible. But that wealth is not being distributed. We have poverty in the midst of plenty even today. And we also have conditions like we had in the Great Depression. Food being destroyed. They're destroying tons of milk in milk-producing areas, just dumping it. And in the United States, I read recently that they had, in the last 2 years, destroyed 155 million chickens. Think about that, because there's some kind of bird flu about. Well, they're not going to solve that problem. It's in the wild fowl. It's in nature. And so they're not going to eliminate bird flu by killing all the chickens, but they will perhaps lead us to a crisis of food availability. And that could well be what it's all about. Also, the people who were killing their chickens were getting big subsidies to do it. So is this just another example of insider trading? You know, if you can kill all your chickens, it's guaranteed income. You don't have to go out and sell them. This is the kind of society we're living in. The economic system is so distorted and absolutely corrupt.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned there was President Trump with his Silicon Valley mates. And we go back just to the recent budget here in Australia, where they had a roundtable discussion and they invited all these bigwigs, all the big people from big industry and multinational, groups and whatnot. And they all got in there into Canberra, where they shouldn't be because they're not representatives, they're not elected. Sat down around a round table and sussed out what they're going to do for the next budget. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's not representative. We elect our parliament to do as we wish, but they've got in all the big wigs from the people who are basically monopolies all around the place, and they're the ones making the suggestions. So, it's pretty scary, isn't it, when you think about it? So, Daniel, something over from you for what Mr. Trump's been doing?
Oh, well, I don't have much to say about Trump other than you don't really want to trust him, as he's had a track record of not being trustworthy. So that would be my point about Trump. I actually want to follow on from Robert's comment about technology in our previous generations. I recently had a weekend away with some friends who brought some other friends along with us, and we had a heated discussion about social credit because they started complaining about the cost of living, how things were so expensive. I offered them a potential solution to it, and they found the idea of diminished work, that is to say, because the machine is, in fact, human labor-saving devices, we don't need to be working all the time. The gentleman that I was discussing with, he was absolutely adamant on the idea that people need to generate value. They need to create value, and they need to constantly do it. And I tried to explain to this individual that most people actually don't create value in the sense that I think he was using it. Everything we have as of this moment today is the result of someone else in the past. This is our cultural heritage. The things that are truly disruptive have probably either been suppressed, but nonetheless, the idea of creating value isn't also necessarily about working all the time. I believe it was one of the earlier chapters of Social Credit. Douglas talks about a farmer versus an artist, in the sense that a farmer can dig in the ground for a potato and they can grow a ton of potatoes. A painter could very likely dig in the ground and grow a ton of potatoes as well. But the farmer wouldn't be able to create a painting that might become a national treasure. And so value doesn't necessarily come from going to work all the time and just drudging away with the toil of whatever it is you might be doing. Sometimes it could be aesthetic. It could be many other things. But this gentleman was generally stuck up on the idea of creating value. And I thought, well, how about you create value for yourself? Take the technology that our forebears have created, again, is labor saving. We don't need to be working all the time. And this is something that is very hard to get across to people that I do speak about in the streets and when I go out on my travels. They are so stuck on the idea that, oh, no, I've got to be working. I've got to be working. That's actually completely opposite to what the scientists and engineers have been doing for the last 150 years. For the last 150 years, they've been trying to get humans out of the process completely. Because more often than not, when you stick human beings in the productive process, you're actually inefficient. I can't think of any specific examples off the top of my head, but I can imagine the viewers in their own living lives have gone to work and thought, we don't need that person there. If only we could automate that out. But no one says everything because they know for a fact, oh, well, if we throw them out of a job, they're just going to have to go find another one. And this is where the idea of associating work with incomes is a negative idea at the end of the day. It's actually quite destructive because we are constantly trying to put people back into the job that either doesn't exist or is completely witless, redundant, or destructive. It's becoming, especially with this AI coming down the pipeline. I mean, there have been a few reports. Ford recently re-employed about 300 of their senior engineers because they tried to replace these senior engineers with AI, and the AI couldn't actually do the job. They had to get a human being back to manually do the work. But I do believe it is simply a matter of time when these the AI is efficient enough to do exactly as we've been describing, labor-saving devices to get human beings out of the productive system. So we're going to, and that was again with the gentleman I was speaking to on the weekend. He had a great difficulty with the accepting the idea that we can in fact separate work from incomes. So we all have a challenge in front of us to actually try and make the public aware of this idea. So hopefully this broadcast will make a change, and all the other broadcasters here, that hopefully they can get through to their audiences as well, because at some point something has to give. Literally, you cannot have on the one hand full employment, while on the other hand you have scientists and engineers constantly throwing people out of work. Cheers.
Thanks, Daniel. And you touch on a really good point there. If you go back into prehistory, well, not prehistory, but back before mechanization really started to occur, we get to the point where people were spending their time drudging to get things just to survive. As we've increased our ability to do the jobs that we need to do without the manpower, we've created leisure, and we've been able to spend that time in something that we value. Now, the whole concept of value, like you say, is one of those questions. If you ask what is value, and people say, oh, value is when you get something for a good price, or you go out and it's something you create. What about the other side of the coin when you say, what do you value? And as a family man, I value time with my kids. I value time, doing stuff that means something to me, and that is to me is more valuable. And I think, from a point of view of probably most people who work, they value their free time more than they value the time at work. And that was the whole point of creating the leisure, was to give us time to go and to do the spiritual or the social, and grow philosophically, or however you want to put it, become a greater person. The money side of it was only ever a means to an end. And once you've got that solved, once you've got that production, the grubbing in the dirt solved, then it frees you up to actually pursue greater things, to pursue your art, to pursue your architecture, all the things that are supposed to make a civilization great. But sadly, that's something we've been conditioned to remove from us, I think, in some ways. I'm going to touch on data centers because I think they're important. We've had Donald Trump again proposing something. This goes back to what we were saying about the alchemy of George Soros. In Australia here, and I'm assuming it's similar in other countries, we've seen the slow progressive decline of our energy systems. We have to go to net zero, so we're pushing for intermittent power, which is solar and wind. And now they're saying, well, that can't cope, so we've got to put batteries everywhere, and we're finding issues with batteries. So the coal and the gas and every other form of generation has been slowly but surely being made decrepit, not being made to keep up with the new technology, and just letting it to be run down, basically. So we're now at a situation where we have a possibly failing power grid. And how are we going to solve that problem? Obviously, throwing more solar panels and more wind turbines at them is not going to really solve the problem, because they're still intermittent. However, the new thing on the horizon, if you watch, again, Donald Trump's talk to and that was a press release he was on anyway, and he's saying the next best thing for GDP is all these AI centers. We're going to be the best in the world. We're going to lead the field. And not only that, they're going to have these power generation capabilities because they can't afford to be without power. So they'll be a decentralized power grid by proxy. So we've destroyed the system, and now we're going to say we're going to have data centers because not only are they going to be good because they're data centers, however that works, but they're going to generate power as well. So we've added a sweetener to it. We've added we have to have them because suddenly our grid can't cope. And to me, that's a sleight of hand, and it is really very typical of the way that create a problem and then present a solution that will help them, not us. André, would you like to jump in on any point of that or anything we've said?
One thing you were mentioning about data center, I have the feeling that when they create those data center, first of all, they know what they're doing. The data, who's using the data, and which data are they collecting, for what purpose? Nobody has this question. That's the first point. The second point is, we talked about energy. Those data centers do not produce energy. They produce behavior. They are there not to analyze or to improve our lives. Like Robert was mentioning, technology should help us work less and have more time for what I say, leisure, meditation, beauty, and being able to admire the world that we live in. Those systems are there to deprive us of something. Don't forget one thing, and there's another thing I want to talk about. Fossil fuel. This expression. We have this concept of abiogenic petrol or abiogenic oil, which means that it is not from fossil. It does not come from dinosaurs. It's a natural resources. You have this with coal. You have this with gas. Nuclear power, for example, is an innovation. It is a discovery. It should benefit to all humanity. While I see Trump wants to deprive, for example, Iran of the possibility to enrich uranium for civil purpose. Behind that, there's always this concept of war. Trump was mentioning war will create full employment. That goes with what Daniel was saying about you cannot disconnect work with income. They are conditioned to think like this. I think that they know what they're doing. We know what they're doing. Solzhenitsyn was saying, we know what they're thinking. They know what we're thinking, and we know that they know that we're thinking. And we don't have to say it 25 times. Most of us, or a lot of people who are a little bit aware of the flaws in this actual system, especially people who are studying social credit since many years. John Paul and I were quite new in this, but I think about Bob and many people who are there and they know this system. They've seen it, that the system was suppressed or the doctrine was suppressed. I think they know that this doctrine would undermine their power. And today, data center that's funny because in 2022, when the special military operation was launched in Ukraine, the pandemic disappeared in 24 hours. So everybody was saying, Vladimir Putin solved the problem of the pandemic. It's like the data center solved the problem of climate change. And I want to reemphasize again, there's no such thing as clean energy. You were mentioning windmill, wind farm, solar. They all have an impact. They all have what we call carbon footprint, if you want. It's not people, they have this tendency of just complying to what we say. The new thing, like I always say, you change their SIM card, they will believe something else. That's a huge challenge for people who would like to bring rational solution. For example, like the doctrine of social credit, but also re-implying maybe what is the definition of a moral code, a real good moral code, which we don't see it anymore today.
Yeah, very much like, what's the definition of value and what is actually value? The clean energy point that I was trying to make there, and I didn't touch on, was the fact that suddenly the fossil fuels are okay because they're going to use them to have backup power for data centers. And with the proposal that they were making with this rise of all these data centers is, well, they can become mini power generators as well and sell it back to the grid. But of course, they're using dirty fossil fuels, as the dirty in inverted commas goes. So it's all right when they do it, but it's not all right when we do it. Go figure. John Paul.
Sorry, I was muted. There we go. Yeah, I believe there's a direct correlation between energy production and prosperity. And then when you look at this, the concept of anthropogenic climate change was kind of utilized as a rationalization to deindustrialize and degrow Western economies. And we were inundated with this Malthusian framing, like we have to do it. There's people of my generation that didn't have babies because of this climate catastrophism. Like we're going to end the world because of growth. Growth is vilified. So at the same time, you're seeing, excuse me, I kind of lost myself there. Yeah, at the same time, what we were seeing them do is they wanted people to acclimate to a lesser quality of life. Within this framing, especially over the last 10 years, that's when we see the implementation of carbon taxation. The premise of that is being to gradually decrease or incrementally decrease the quality of life of the people to the point where they don't realize it's happening. It's like the analogy of the frog being slow boiled in the pot. So now we're in an era where they're turning around on a dime. For a couple of decades of them inundating us with this one framing, they're now trying to rationalize powering these data centers. The one in Utah, for instance, that came to the forefront, I believe that requires the power that it takes to power Manhattan. So it's not an inconsequential level of energy that's being rerouted to this cause. And it's like I said, it's a smack in the face for the people over the last 20 years that have really fell for this man-made climate change narrative.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, yeah, it's one of those, again, it's just amazing sometimes when you start to look at what they're actually talking about, how much they flip-flop when they start talking about what they want to see, and then they turn around and do it themselves. So, yeah. Robert?
Well, don't these data centers contribute to global warming? You're going to have tens of thousands of them, it seems. And suddenly global warming doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. It's because all these big crises that they thrust on us are just psyops. They're just designed to make the population think a certain way so that they'll go along with some big corporate or financial program. And, people get taken in by it because they get all these academics approving the statistics and the data that they're producing. But these academics are not free individuals. They're all controlled by money in the same way practically everybody else is. And they are delivering the interpretations and the statistical analyses that the powers that be want in order to further their agendas. And, it's everybody practically is in this situation. How many people are independently secure financially? A very small percentage of the population. In fact, I would say none, because even a billionaire, if they want to bring him to ground, if they want to bring him down, they can do it. They can institute some sort of legal procedures or bring some scandal to bear, even if it's an invented one or real or not. They can destroy anybody. And we are more or less defenseless against this because we're not possessors of our the inheritance that we should have from all the technology and wealth that has been accumulated. The idea that a baby is born into this society with nothing, he's a naked little baby and he's got no rights to any economic benefits. You know, it's if he has a right, it's something that is granted by government. It's not regarded as being an inherent right that he has because he is a creation of God. But that's the way we should be thinking. Yeah, and you know, we get a benefit from our association. Social credit called this the unearned increment of association. And this is not monetized. It exists. It's a real thing. It's a real phenomenon, but we don't have the financial means of getting control of it, like getting our hands on it. And it's enormous. You know, if you have a guy trying to move a rock and he can't move it, and then suddenly somebody else shows up and they do move it, the increment of association is that the job is done. It couldn't be done before, now it's 100% done. If you get a lever, you might be able to move that rock. There are all sorts of associations in nature that we don't think of, but they have increments. I was reading the other day about rope. Rope has an increment of association because if you take the individual strands and you suspend a weight from them, they're much less strong than those strands intertwined and working together in a rope. What an amazing thing! The individual strands are incapable of performing the job that they can if they get together in the form of a rope. This really, I thought, was an amazing thing. And we should be looking for all these increments, and particularly the increments we get from human association and all the technological associations that have been established that all yield fantastic benefits that nobody has earned. They're just inherent in the way things operate. But this is not talked about, as far as I can see, by any economist. They don't recognize the significance of this, but it is practically the foundation of all our success. The fact that we can put things together in association and get extra benefits from them without anybody doing anything special to get those benefits. It's just a matter of we put things together right. And this is a science, and we should be studying it and favoring it wherever we can. But you know, these data centers, they're designed not to benefit us in a human way. They're designed to take us away from humanistic associations. People don't want to be connected to these data centers. Who has an interest in that? They have interest in being associated through other things, but data centers, no. And
yeah,
I have a son who lives in China. I was talking to him just this morning, I think, and he was saying the other day he was driving on a highway. In China, they don't have highways the way we have them. Their highways are 30 feet in the air for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. I mean, it's like the city of the future over there. It's incredible. And they don't have any shortages of energy, even though they got 1.5 billion people to provide energy for. They've got any kind of project they want to do, they just go ahead with it. In the meantime, we are struggling along with our devastatingly expensive energy and problems with technology, they say, and all sorts of studies that have to be done years and years before we can go ahead with a project that will be of benefit to the population. You know, we are being sabotaged in our ability to accomplish anything. And anyway, my son was driving on this highway, and all of a sudden there's a sign overhead that says, "David, you were driving too fast." And he was driving 3 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. He said he went down a little bit further and he got the same message. they particularize, and there are tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of cars on that road, but they know who you are and they are surveilling you. And I mean, it's not a bad thing to tell people they're driving too fast, but that 3 kilometers an hour seems a little bit unreasonable. But this is a society that we are being thrust into with all this technology that is basically being misused, and rather than humanizing our associations, is making them more and more remote and more inhuman.
Yeah. Yeah, what you're talking about there is mission creep, isn't it? I think that's what they term it. When you're talking flock cameras or anything else, or even the data, like you say, you know, it's put there for a purpose, and they always pick the most most glamorous reason for having it. You know, we're going to solve a murder, or we're going to stop a terrorist, or, you know, but when it comes down to it, they just start earning huge swathes of revenue and start impinging on everybody's lives by just saying, you know, like 3 Ks an hour over. Yeah, it's mission creep. What they wanted to start out with and what they promised takes a backseat to what they actually start using it for. The concept of rope as an increment association, I think, is not one I've heard before, but I think it's actually brilliant, because, you know, a rope might be 40 foot long, but each individual strand might only be 2 feet long. By the time you wind it all together and the friction and everything else, I think it's really a very good example of how a society works. We all play a small part, and we all bond to get that increment of association. Daniel, would you like to continue on with anything you'd like?
At the risk of publicly embarrassing myself, I was one of the individuals that John Paul just mentioned about having too many babies. I chose not to have children because the general sentiment that was given through my education and the media at the time was that there's just too many people on the planet. As I've gotten older, I've come to realize this was a complete and utter sham, and I'm quite bitter about the fact that I don't have children. Especially in the sense of, I can't speak to the rest of the world, but I know Australia, for example, its population in relation to its raw material, yeah, there should be absolutely zero problems in this country with either feeding people, clothing people, housing people, and generating enough electricity for all to go around and in excess. As I understand it, growth for the sake of growth is the ideology of a cancer cell. I can imagine there is at some point a balancing factor where, you know, you can have too many people on the planet. But I think that would be more to do with the excessive pollution that would come from the population itself. Because I don't believe in climate change anymore, but I am a big believer in pollution. We create products for ourselves that have been designed to fail, and there's no necessary reason for this. And it's planned obsolescence. And the reason planned obsolescence is most people talk about, well, if they make products too good, well, they can only sell the product once, and for that generation only. What are the factory workers going to do? So what? Let's send them on a holiday. Go away. Come back in, say 12 years when we need another batch of product. This is where I like the idea of the national dividend and the social credit economic model, because you can roll a factory up as you need it and then roll it back down when the market's been completely saturated and the desire for the goods have been satisfied. And that's what all you really need it for. The idea of producing for the sake of producing to distribute incomes is a form of insanity. And it's not just a form of insanity. It will eventually, I do believe, it will choke the planet. It has to at some point, with the amount of rubbish coming out of the back end. Like I said, I'm not a big believer in this whole climate change idea, but I do believe it's largely a hoax. But pollution is something you can legitimately see with your own eyes. And I'm not trying to call out any countries here, but on the internet, there is a thing that's going around. It's called the Pindia Challenge. So what you do is you go into Google Maps and you drop a pin anywhere in India and you win if you find a clean spot. I know it sounds terribly it sounds terrible to say, but you can do this yourself, and it's not even supposedly racist. It's just what it is. The street maps are there for you to look at yourself. There is rubbish and there's rubble and general decay in all locations across that map. I mean, I wouldn't like to live there, and I feel very sorry for the individuals that do live there, and they could probably improve themselves given the opportunity, but it comes back to our methods of consumption. I'll even take one example that's closer to home. My own wife's Filipino, and they have over there, the Philippines is actually, along with, I believe it's China, Thailand, Vietnam, are some of the largest producers of single-use plastics. And what I mean by this is, because the population is, broadly speaking, they have less purchasing power in their pocket to do anything for any given day, they will not buy in bulk. Like, for example, in the Western world, we might go to the supermarket and we might buy a 5-kilo box of laundry detergent. So it comes in a cardboard box. You've got it for however long it lasts, but it's still a 5-kilo box. They sell laundry detergent in those countries as a single-use packet. That comes in a single-use plastic packet. So, you do that 365 days a year for a given population, when your distribution method could in fact be a 5-kilo box. You go to the shop and you use your own refillable container. Again, I'm not being critical of these people. It's not necessarily their fault. I'm just trying to highlight the pollution problem, which I do genuinely believe is a legitimate issue, which is why I'm a big component of social credit. I do believe toxic finance is actually what's destroying the planet more than our actual human activity. You can't deny the fact that we may have imposed scars upon this planet that will take a very long time to heal. But those scars, I do believe, can be genuinely minimized by producing a product that lasts longer, is repairable. So for every dollar brought forward in production, you need a dollar brought forward to buy it. And for every dollar brought forward in production is a dollar you can improve for quality, longevity, reliability, and repairability. And then, as I was just saying a moment ago, once your market's saturated with the desire for a new product, roll the factory down, let the workers go onto a break, give them time off, let them go to other projects as they please. But yeah, no, solving toxic finance will be probably a better way to save the planet than actually trying to bring all these ideas of, especially the wooden spoon. Can I just have a rant about the wooden spoon? There is nothing more in this world that I despise than the wooden spoon. For example, you've got to take the time and fertilize it to grow it for a start. Then you need to use energy consumption to harvest it. You need energy consumption to transport it. You need further energy consumption to actually turn it into a usable product. You need further energy consumption to distribute it. You use it once, and then you throw the bloody thing in the bin. Whereas when you think about the availability of raw material in relation to population, I have no doubt in my mind that we could actually produce 1 trillion stainless steel spoons, give them to the population, and then go and reuse them again. The idea of a scarcity on this planet, I no longer believe exists. In raw material in relation to population, this is the thing that needs to be focused on a little bit more, because there is no shortage of anything. There really isn't. It's just the rate of production to satisfy the market that might be scarce. But even then, I do believe that's an artificial one. Simply because, take for example, this, as we've been discussing with data centers, I'm a bit of a computer enthusiast. RAM prices have gone through the roof, and GPU prices have gone through the roof. These factories are now operating nearly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the data centers are swallowing the entire lot. So as an average consumer, you are paying through the nose to get at these products. My answer would be, go and build another factory. There's no difficulty in building another factory. There can't be. How do I know this? Because you built one in the first place. You wouldn't be able to provide these chips for the data centers if these factories didn't exist in the first place. So go build another one. And then they argue, oh, but that would be sunk capital. You know, we've built it up, we've satisfied the market, and then we can no longer use it. And the mind is so focused on a financial. They use the financial realm and the world of imaginary numbers to restrict the physical world that you live in. And it's so you have to recognize in a very serious way the difference between truth and fantasy. And money at the end of the day is largely a fantasy. It's just numbers in an account. It's simply accountancy. So anything that is physically possible has to be financially possible. I think that'll be my closing comments for the day. Cheers.
Excellent. And that is exactly what we were leading on to there. You're obviously traumatized by the wooden spoon when you were younger. That's what I was going to say. I wish my mum didn't have a wooden spoon. But it's a bit like Grandpa's axe, though, too, isn't it? You know, you make something, it should last. You know, your Grandpa's axe, off, it's got three heads and 14 handles or something, but it's still Grandpa's axe. But no, in reality, you know, I've had a hot water service that was 70 years old and it was still going strong. You know, a fridge, same thing. You know, the old first fridge that the family ever bought. You know, still going 70 years later. Why can't we build stuff like that? We can, and like you say, you know, it's the system that is at fault here, and we've been conditioned to believe that that's acceptable. And I think that that's one of the things that social credit needs to be capable of addressing. I mean, I know it's capable of addressing, but we have to find the ways to do it. And earlier in the program, we were talking about that. John Paul, you were working on how do we actually get that message out to people? What is it that we need as a trigger, a three-word trigger for some reason to actually show that this sort of conditioning or the challenges we face, I guess, are not real, or they have a better way to be realised? How do you actually get that spark to start with? Just a very short one, if you've got it, would be good. Just a wrap up and some of your ideas on that regard, perhaps.
I think for me, coming to this, which I've done relatively recently, I'm noticing that what I'm endeavoring to do, Andre, myself, and Dr. Oliver, we're trying to explain this from an academic standpoint. We're getting into the mechanistics of the theorem, the gap, and this is extremely important. I'm not trying to diminish or trivialize that level of understanding, but for Joe Public, Joe Average, they need to know what it's going to do for them in real time. So I'm thinking it might be more advantageous for us to come up with slogans and explain it in a very simplistic regard. What does a Douglas social credit system look like for the individual? What does it accomplish for people? And I think that might be a way to intrigue people before we scare them off with some of the academic talkings regarding it. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with some of the short videos we're producing. Because when you think of it, there's a lot of people that'll advocate for capitalism or even socialism, but most of those people can't explain how it operates on a macroeconomic level, because most people's minds aren't like that. They're not necessarily academic minded, especially when it comes to economics or macroeconomics, but there's simplistic ways to explain this to people, and that's the answer, I feel.
Thank you, John. That's exactly what we're looking at. Daniel, when you were someone was talking about value, and we have the two ideas of value. Like I said, one is materialistic, and the other one is real. And I think they're the things that we've got to address, because we have all been conditioned. I think we can all recognise that. Andre, any comments there, or anything you can add, or any insights that make it easier for people to understand?
Well, first of all, I could refer to, you were saying, you know, the material world and the immaterial world. There's a book by Michael Jones. The title is The Dangers of Beauty, and it expressed the idea of architecture, music, painting through history, and how in the 20th century beauty completely disappeared. So I think, in a sense, for example, what John Paul wants to do with those short clip, and also some meme. I saw a meme today made by AI, and it was quite funny because it is two characters that are historic character. And I suddenly I told myself, why we don't animate Douglas with some of those quotes, very short quotes, and you use the voice. Dr. Adon was telling me that they have recording of the voice of Douglas. So people, they would associate Douglas, a character, a historic character in economy and engineering in the 21st century. How we could present Douglas today, so we would make him alive and his doctrine would be alive. They would say, wait a second, and we hear Douglas live. We see AI imitating everybody, you know, those famous characters. So I think it would be an idea to bring Douglas back and try to promote himself, the doctrine. That could just with, you know, associating with what John Paul was saying, smart clip, because there's a lot of people, they are enthusiastic about seeing an image or a character that is animated. AI today is extraordinary if we do not lose the human aspect.
Yes, I like the I have to get hold of that book. That resonates a bit, because everywhere around you, you see the creations that they're making these days. They're just ugly. There's really a lack of beauty in a lot of things. Robert, you've been at it for quite a while, so what do you find as the best way to engage people, or have you any thoughts on the matter we're discussing?
Well, yeah, I've spoken to people for many years about social credit, and it's a good thing to do, because in explaining it, you have to understand it yourself, and it's a great learning device. And I'm still learning about social credit. I pick up a book by Douglas and I find insights in it that I probably encountered before, but the mind, you know, forgets things. But Douglas was a genius, and he was a gift to humanity. And he has not got the recognition he deserves, because he challenged the power structure, and the system of, or the principles of monetary reform that he advocated would overthrow the power structure, and it would decentralize it. So instead of being planned from the top, you know, we virtually have a communistic or a fascistic system, because it's all planned from the top, and they administer it through their control of finance, and they control individuals this way. And well, somebody was mentioning waste, and we're seeing a great example of waste right now with this war that's going on that Trump has started. And I just wanted to draw attention to something that jackass said last week. It's unbelievable. He said that 200,000 American soldiers had been killed in Vietnam. I can't believe that he is not being thrown out of office, because I think everybody in the United States knows that more like 60,000 American soldiers. He is a total ignoramus, and he doesn't care one bit about anybody except him and his friends. And I mean, it's just incredible that this guy has become the president of the United States, and he's disseminating nonsense to justify his conduct of a war, because he said, oh, well, we're killing many fewer Americans in this war, or we're getting them killed at a slower rate than in previous wars. And so he exaggerates in the most unbelievable way the harms that were done by previous wars. We're living in a nightmare world with these people. Really, it's it's got to be stopped. And where is the means of stopping it? We don't have them, because we don't have the political tools to get rid of somebody who is being so destructive of his own society. You know, it's something that has to be corrected. I don't know how you do it, because people are not engaged in political thinking as they used to be. They've become very cynical, or they're just angry with their neighbors, because they've got a different view. But something has to be done to bring people together so they can put out of office somebody who is so callous and ignorant as this man.
Yeah, you got to watch what they say, because quite often they're not saying, not talking reality. When you talk like that, though, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's amazing. People don't question it. They're not willing to look back into history, and sometimes we can get them out and we can stop things. I just mentioned Katoomba, which is in the Blue Mountains, stopped their data center. They would have proposal was put towards their council to get a data center up and running in there, and the people got together and basically they've stopped it at this point. Hopefully it stays that way. But we can change our outcomes, and the best way to change those outcomes is to put pressure on our local politicians, the ones that we actually vote for, and to get like-minded people within our own communities to put pressure on them as well. Ring them up, send them emails, visit them at their office. Again, if 2 or 3 people every week turned up in the office and, said, we don't want them here, I think they'd probably shake. Maybe it'll make a difference. I don't know, but, we have to find the things that people are united about stopping, or united about, creating a real world rather than the system world we've got. Daniel, you're the man on the street that does these things. Would you like to make final comment for today?
Again, I'll relate my own personal experience with Douglas Social Credit in that when I initially encountered it, it says some wild things, absolutely wild things that I would never have thought myself, to be honest. When I gave my speech in 2025, I said there, and I'll say it again here, if it wasn't for the new information that is available, the old stuff would not have stuck the way it did. The 2 documents that I'm referring to is the first one is the Bank of England 2014 Q1 statement, money creation in the modern economy. That document is a pillar of my reality at this point, along with a white paper by a credentialed economist by the name of Richard A. Werner. The banks create the money out of nothing, the theories and the empirical evidence? These are the 2 documents that made me realize, because these are both authoritative sources, these are not just my opinion, or had I encountered Douglas first, his opinion. No, these are the statements that are coming from the horse's mouth. Every bank loan simultaneously creates a bank deposit, and every time you repay a bank loan, you simultaneously destroy a bank deposit. So when you are creating the money out of nothing, quite literally creating the money out of nothing, the question becomes, well, why is there not enough money to do X project? Or why don't I have enough money to buy something? The reality of it is there shouldn't be. At all times, this is the number one. So when I went into the Murdoch University's basement, the one thing that stuck out for me was the electors' demand. And the number one demand was that at all times, the amount of cash credits in the nation should be equal to the amount of consumable goods within that nation. So as we always say, because of the gap between incomes and prices, the nation is never able to buy back all that it produces. And this is where the national dividend comes in to fill that gap, along with the national discount to help bring prices down. So if you are interested in the more, as John Paul would say, the academic side of it, those 2 documents, Bank of England 2014 Q1 statement and Richard A. Werner, Do the Banks Make the Money Out of Nothing? The Theory and the Empirical Evidence. These are very, very enlightening reads because, again, for me, these are the 2 pillar documents that helped me get over the bridge, that helped me to understand Douglas Social Credit on broader grounds. Cheers.
Thanks, Daniel. Excellent. So, today we've sort of looked at that. We looked at quite a few things, but I guess one of the things we're confronting at this point is the materialistic view that most people nowadays have been conditioned to accept. What is this going to do for me? And I think that is our challenge going ahead. We need to work out how it is that we can present this argument, this the argument for social credit, to change the system to better reflect reality, and how we actually get that past the conditioning that people are subject to. So this materialistic view that, you know, what's in it for me needs to be addressed. And I think, yeah, that's our challenge going ahead. But the answers do lie in social credit. The answers do lie in correcting the corrupt system that we're functioning under. And that's what we effectively talk about each week. So thank you very much, guys, for your input this week. And look forward to seeing you again in the near future. So that's goodbye from us today. Cheers.
This country's not going to be saved from the top because that's where all the rot is. It's too deep. It's going to be saved from the grassroots.